Teacher of Fly Fish Food with Skill Builder number 28. We're going to show you the proper way to open your scissors when you need to cut just a little tiny bit. We're going to talk about hook sizing and why universal hook sizing will never, ever, 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 ever happen. We're also going to talk about Snowshoe Hare's foot, one of my favorite materials, and how you can use it for dry flies or nymphs.
That's a big
Okay, I'm going to show you a hack with the scissors. So this is something that I see quite a bit. Scissors, they have all different blade shapes and everything. And when you're trimming little small sections of flies, I see people just open up those scissors and just kind of start hacking away. So on this one, for example, if I just open this up and started cutting, I might cut some of the part that I don't want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to barely open the tips of my scissor and kind of shove the materials into the scissor like this, and then just cut it off at an angle. But by only opening my scissors the bare minimum amount to cut off what I need to, I can be sure that I'm not going to cut anything else off. This is one of the techniques that I show my kids like first thing. He's a bald bird, dude, but he's got rattlesnake teeth. You can't just put a whiteboard in front of me and expect me not to doodle. All right, we're going to talk about hook sizing. Is there standardized hook sizing? Family friendly. Family friendly, my bad. What the heck? Okay, we hear this all the time. They're like, you guys need to make a hook size chart that shows everything on there, or there needs to be standardized hook sizing in the industry. Well, it's a bigger challenge than you would think, okay? This would be like going to, say, Nike, Reebok, Adidas. Brig, what was the shoe that you liked from like Shopko that you used to get?
K-Swiss.
K-Swiss? All right, yeah, the K-Swiss were ballers back in the day. But imagine getting all those companies to agree on a standard sizing for their shoes. They're going to vary a little bit. It's kind of like when you buy clothing, for example, there's a sizing chart because not everybody's extra large is extra large. Like if I buy an extra large when I'm in Argentina, it's going to fit like a medium in the States. So anyway, standardized sizing among companies is going to be really, really hard. And even within the same companies, it can get muddy. So I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so this is a B10S Gamakatsu. It's a 3/0. It's a stinger hook. The hook gap is pretty wide. You can kind of see that's a pretty gnarly hook. This is also a Gamakatsu 3/0 hook, and it's a little bit shorter shank. That's doable. We can allow that, but the hook gap is noticeably smaller than on this one. Additionally, we have the good old Tiemco 8089, another stinger hook, extra wide gap, and it's got a really, really wide gap. This is a size 2, and this size 2 you could almost put inside of this size 2, okay? So the examples go on and on and on and on. So as a fly tire, when you're starting out, this could be really frustrating. I get it. That's understandable. But if you're a more experienced angler, you should be able to kind of just figure out what size you need to get within certain models. Like if you buy an 18 and then you switch brands, you get an 18 and it's a little bit bigger, you don't necessarily need to get mad about that. You just know that, okay, I need to buy a 20 in this size. And it's harder when you're buying online. And so I'm going to just kind of draw out hook proportion a little bit, and I'm going to throw something out there. I hope the hook manufacturers are listening, because I think this would help a lot of the issue that we're having in the old hook world. So here we have a hook, okay? Notice I didn't draw a barb. That was on purpose, okay? So there's an eye here. All right, so from here to here is the shank. And don't look at my just generally this portion of the hook is the shank, okay? From here to here is the gap. Not the place where you buy 90s clothes. This is what does the business of the hook. Here's your eye, and here is the point, and this is the bend. Okay, so the most important part of this hook, let's say that we have a bug that we're trying to mimic, and the bug kind of looks like this from a top view. You have some, wing casey stuff, and then you have, oh, sorry, I gotta erase this. We're gonna get rid of that. So then it tapers down to kind of a round end. You have something like this, and then you have like 3 mayfly tails. Maybe up here you have some more wings, and this is the head with little beady eyes, and he just farted. Just kidding. Mayflies don't fart. All right, so anyway, we have a bug that's roughly that long. I'm just gonna erase that because I'll need the board. So let's say that bug was, I don't know, 17 millimeters long, okay? That's the most important part of that insect that you need to figure out, is the length of the insect, okay? So you need to find a hook that has a shank length of roughly the size of the bug you're tying. I know it's complicated, and luckily fish are kind of dumb. So as long as it's close, you're gonna be okay. So another thing that I hear is I want an 18 that's extra long because I like fishing an 18, and the fishing report told me that it was a size 18, so I need a size 18, but the bugs are a little bigger, but I want to still tie it on an 18. Okay, so this is what that looks like. Here's like a size 18. Ooh, that's a bad hook, okay? So if we wanted to do, a 3x long shank, we're like this, but we still have that wimpy hook gap of an 18, okay? So if I were just to switch to a 16 or maybe even a 14, I have a hook now that looks like this with a bigger gap, okay? So we talk about hook sizing and wide gaps and this and that, but again, it's, if you're looking for a bug that's this long, this is your size 18, 3x, let's say that's 17 millimeters long. This is a size 14. This is just kind of general, but you can go over to the wall and find exact hooks that would do this. Just a normal 14, no extra long or anything, just a standard 14, which is also 17 millimeters long. So don't buy the 18 just because the fishing report said it's a size 18. This is going to impede your hookup because you don't have a lot of space here. This is the money zone right here. So you're basically taking that away from the fish by probably putting a whole bunch of junk on the hook up here. Your hook gap's not going to be very good. That's why the standard 14, which is roughly the same length as a 3x long 18, that has a much more favorable hook gap, okay? So I know this is confusing, but the only real thing you need to pay attention to on your hooks is shank length. Let's say that our bug again had a 17 millimeter body length, so we need to hook with a 17 millimeter shank. That is the most critical part, I think. So if manufacturers would do something like this, and they would put the specs here. Let's say this is 5 millimeters. And then they could even do the hook length, because not all hook lengths are the same. And this is another 6. So I think that, they could have on the package here that this is like a size 14, normal length, blah, blah, blah. Call it whatever you want. Like this is a TMCO 100. But if these specs were available for all the hooks, we would be able to pick more wisely. So at the end of the day, do you need an extra wide gap? Do you need an extra long hook? That all depends on the fly. But what I'm saying is this size on the packaging doesn't matter as much as what the shank length of your hook is. That matters the most on the hook. So there's really no standard hook sizing. As you become more familiar with the hooks that are out there as an angler, you'll just kind of know which ones are a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. The other thing you can do is, let's say that you have this size 14 and you want to tie a smaller fly. You're going to tie a fly that terminates in about right here. That way you're shortening up the shank length by only tying your fly down a certain portion of the hook. There are a whole bunch of different ways to do it. So, at the end of the day, I'm here to say there's never going to be hook standardized sizing. But if you understand the anatomy of the hook and the anatomy of the bug that you're trying to imitate, you're going to have a much better shot at this. And if you're new, just remember, fish are dumb. Okay? A little tiny bit off, bigger or smaller on your hooks, you should be able to overcome that with good presentation. So just go out there with confidence, get the hooks that you have and you like. Don't worry about this number and just freaking rip lips. All right, we're tying with, what do we have here? Snowshoe rabbit's feet. This is a hare. This is a snowshoe hare. I've used cottontail feet that I've hunted before. I've used jackrabbit, which I think is the best because you can also use hare's mask on those. Be careful they don't have diseases and stuff, yada, yada, yada. There's your warning. But we're going to talk about these little bad boys and the wealth of materials that they are. When I first started getting into tying flies, I would tie size 30 midges. And this was the material that I could get the wings to be completely proportionate without any bulk, and they floated great. So the bunny midge was using this, initially. Right now I use synthetics on it mostly because it's a little bit easier to tie with, but we're going to show you this. So in one of these hairline packs you get the back feet and now the front as well. But I'm going to show you how I like to prep this. And as I do this, I'm going to tell you a funny story. So, first thing I'm going to do, well, I'm going to tell you this first. When my wife was pregnant with our first child, Audrey, she's a freaking redhead, so it makes sense. Anyway, so when my wife was pregnant with Audrey, she thought she was going into labor. We go into the hospital. And I was sitting tying flies at the time in the front room. My wife said, why don't you just bring that stuff with you? I don't think I'm in labor, but you at least won't be bored. That's how cool my wife is. So, I'm going to show you how I prep this and I'll tell you what the nurse said. So, when I take one of these feet, it's got a bunch of really tightly packed stuff here. And I want to open this up so I can get to it a little easier. So I'm just going to take the toes and break them. This is, I know, it's a little gnarly. So now look at that. They're all opened up and I can get down in here and grab the most floaty of all the floaty stuff. They grip the snow with their feet, so these are fairly water repellent. But anyway, that's how to separate them. Anyway, back to the story. I'm sitting there tying at the fly tying desk and I got one of these here and I'm just pretending like there's nothing going on. And finally a nurse, she pokes her head and she's like, I just have to ask, is that from a dog? And made me reassess my whole life. Anyway, no, it's from a rabbit. Anyway, so it wasn't from a dog. We grossed out the nurse. My wife is cool. I got more experience, but let's show you how to use this stuff. All right, so on the underside of the foot, that's where all the floaty stuff is. You can use this stuff back here. This is a lot softer, not quite as buoyant in my opinion. It absorbs a little more water, but still really good. This is the primo stuff between the toes. Between the toes is where you're going to find the stuff that will make a really nice upright wing or something that's going to float nice and high. Now, often overlooked is the back. This little stuff right here is actually really, really good dubbing. So you can take a rake and rake some out. And I'll show you what that looks like. So it's got really cool short guard hairs and it's a short dubbing overall. So it makes a really buggy tight dubbing. All right. So now that you've seen that, I'm going to get on the vise, and we're going to show you how to tie a real simple rabbit's foot emerger using both parts of the fly. Okay, so we'll just get some thread on a hook, nuke that out of there, and I want to angle this up just a little bit, like that. Okay. Let's see, real simple emerger. This is just so you can see the techniques. Well, why not? We'll throw a little copper rib on this bad boy. There we go. Now we can just take this dubbing, and I'm gonna just mix it with my fingers a little bit. I do have a coffee grinder. Sometimes I'll like shave these with a beard trimmer specially designated for fly tying, and just put that whole back portion of the foot in a blender or whatever, and it turns into a really good mix of dub. All right, so we're pretty close here. Let's see how this looks on the fly. Wants to clump up a little bit because it's so fine. All right. So you can see this dubs on really tightly. And I'm going to try to build a little bit of taper into this. You can see this is another cool technique, is just because you have a little bit of dubbing on your thread, doesn't mean it's done. You can always go back and add to it, and it's easier to put it on than take it off. Anyway, take all that stuff, slide it up, and you can see the really cool buggy dub that we get out of that. Counter rib that. Goodness gracious, I'm on the struggle bus today, Brig. There we go. All right, now if I brush this out, you'll see, there's that under fur that just picks out a little bit, but then you have this really cool, kind of more of a rigid guard hair looking body. Anyway, that's what the top of the snowshoe hare's foot looks like. All right, and now I'm just going to come in here and pick on one of these toes. Now, a few ways you can do it. Like if you wanted to align all these tips, it's going to be really hard. Because they don't really stack very well. So what I'll do is I'll just come in here and see if there's any under fur. There's probably not very much. And then you just kind of have to manually stack these if you want them to be somewhat the same size. So I'm just going to take out some long ones and replace them back in the stack. Anyway, something like that. So these are designed to be a messy fly. So I'll show you how to maximize the use of this wing. So I'll bring my thread up to the front, and I'll just tie this in about right here and wrap this back. Grab some more of this dubbing from the top of the foot and wrap a little bit of a thorax. See how that picks out almost like hackle. Okay, now I'm just going to pull those other fibers forward and then just pull that whole wing up and make a thread dam in front of it. All right, now, it seems like I should go in and have to trim out those butts, but I'm just going to kind of taper those down and make those a little bit rough so that they just blend in with the front of it. But anyway, that's a really simple way to use the Snowshoe hare. I mean, that would be a killer caddis emerger, but these come in all different colors. But I mean, if you have a fly that uses CDC or anything like that, as you get tying with this Snowshoe hare, there are lots of ideas that will come to your mind. So anyway, one of my favorite materials.